What if the oldest books on Earth were never meant to be read by the people who wrote them? What if they were locked away on purpose, hidden under sand, written in a code that takes thousands of years to break, waiting for the one group of people who might live long enough to understand? Under the dust storms of southern Iraq, where two great rivers used to make the land green, clay tablets sleep in boxes and forgotten rooms. They are older than the pyramids of Egypt, older than the Sphinx, older than any king or temple we read about in school books. Each one was made by human hands 5,000 years ago. Tiny marks pressed into soft clay, then baked hard in the sun. The marks form shapes called cuneiform. It is the first writing system humans ever made. The tablets are old now. Some are broken. Others were smashed when thieves used bombs to break into tombs during the war. But enough of them are still here to tell us something. And what they tell us is strange. The Sumerians did not call themselves inventors. They called themselves students, people who learned from teachers. They said their knowledge came from gods who arrived after a great flood, from teachers who lived in an older world, a world that drowned before anyone could write it down. Before we go deeper into those old cities, stop for a moment, like this video, and click subscribe if you like this kind of history. The kind that lives between old stories and science. The kind that does not fit in school lessons. And if you are still here, leave a comment. Tell me where you are right now. Tell me what time it is where you live. I want to imagine this story traveling around the world, carried softly into your night, wherever you are. The land between the rivers. That is what Mesopotamia means. It sounds nice until you go there and see that it is just two rivers. The Tigris, fast and wild. The Euphrates, slow and wide. They meet as they flow south toward the sea. Between them is flat land, mud and reeds. 5,000 years ago, this was not a desert. It was wet. Marshes everywhere. Canals cut through the land. The soil was so rich you could grow wheat and barley without even watering it. The first cities were built here. Uruk, Ur, Eridu, Nippur. Names that sound like magic now, but were just towns where people built walls to keep out floods and temples to ask the sky for rain. In 1922, a man from England named Leonard Woolley came to a hill in southern Iraq. Local people called it Tel al-Muqayya, but Woolley knew its old name, Ur. The same Ur mentioned in the Bible, home of Abraham, one of the oldest cities humans ever built. Other men had dug there before, taking statues and bricks back to museums in Europe. But Woolley was different. He did not want prizes. He wanted to understand. He dug slowly, carefully. He wrote down everything he found, every broken cup, every piece of bronze, every tiny shift in the color of the dirt. Then, about 40 feet down, his workers found something strange. Nothing. Just mud. Clean mud that water had left behind. It went down 8 feet deep. No broken plates, no tools, no ash from fires, just thick mud that had been left by water, silent as a scar that never heals. Under that 8 feet of flood mud, they found more things. But these things were different. Older plates, different styles, different clay, different ways of baking. It was like a whole city had lived, been buried by water, forgotten. And then another city was built on top, thousands of years later. The people on top never knew what was under their feet. Woolley stood at the edge of the dig and realized what he was looking at. This was not just a flood, not the river spilling over during spring. This was the flood, the one written about in old king lists, the one carved into clay that said the water rose so high it covered mountains, the one that split time into two parts, before and after. The flood that every culture in this part of the world remembered with fear so deep they carved it into their stories about how the world began. Woolley told the world what he found in 1929. People paid attention for a little while, then they forgot. But the tablets did not forget. They kept being found in temple basements, in palaces, in schools where boys learned to write, by copying old texts over and over until their hands knew the shapes by heart. And the more tablets people translated, the stranger the story got. Because the Sumerians, who made writing, who made the wheel, who built the first cities, did not say they invented these things. They said they were taught. The tablets talk about the Apkallu, the 7 sages, beings who came from the sea before the flood. They wore cloaks made of fish skin. They brought knowledge of the stars, farming, building, and law. They taught people how to count the days of the year, how to cut a circle into 360 pieces, how to build temples that lined up with the sunrise, how to write laws that were fair. Then the flood came, the Apkallu disappeared. The old world drowned. When the water went away, the people who were left found themselves in a world with no memory, no books, no teachers, only pieces. Clay tablets buried in mud, stone foundations half melted by water, and the hard job of building everything again from broken pieces of what used to be. This is not how we teach history in schools. We teach forward movement, slow improvement. People who lived in caves slowly learning farming, then pottery, then metal, then writing. Each step earned by trying and failing. But the Sumerian tablets say something else. They say restoration, getting back knowledge that already existed. Not making it new, but digging it up. Not creating, but remembering. Here is what makes the tablets strange. The Sumerian language has no relatives. It is alone. Not connected to any other language family on earth. Not Arabic, not Greek, not anything we can trace back. It just appears, fully grown, around 3,200 before the Common Era. Already able to say complex ideas. Already able to talk about things that would not show up in human thinking for thousands of years. Where did it come from? Language experts have no answer. It is like the language was brought here complete from somewhere else. Somewhere we cannot find. And the math. The Sumerians counted in groups of 60, not groups of 10 like we do when we count on our fingers. Groups of 60. A system so smart we still use it and do not even notice. 60 seconds in a minute. 60 minutes in an hour. 360 parts in a circle. All Sumerian. Or maybe not Sumerian at all. Maybe inherited. Counting by 60 lets you divide easily. You can split it by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, 20, 30, and 60. Perfect for watching the stars, for tracking moon cycles that go on for years and centuries. But why would farmers and shepherds need this? Unless they were not starting from zero. Unless they were rebuilding, using pieces of knowledge saved from before. The king list is one of the strangest things ever found. Carved on clay tablets and stone shapes, it records every ruler who had power in Sumer from the beginning of time until about 1800 before the Common Era. The list has 2 parts. Before the flood and after. After the flood, the kings are normal. They rule for 20 years, 30 years, sometimes 40. Human lives, human stories. But before the flood, the numbers get wild. Alulim, the first king, rules for 28,800 years. Alalngar rules for 36,000 years. And Menlu Ana rules for 43,200 years. 8 kings total. Their combined rule is 241,200 years. Experts say these numbers are symbols. Old stories making things bigger than real to show the kings were chosen by gods. But what if the numbers mean something else? What if they are not about kings living forever, but about cycles? Time cycles, star cycles. The slow spin of Earth that takes 25,920 years to complete. The Sumerians split the sky into 12 sections. We call it the zodiac. Each section lasts 2,160 years, 1/12 of the big cycle. These numbers, 2,000, 160, 4,000, 320, 25,000, 920, show up again and again in old texts, not as how long someone lived, but as keys to understanding deep time. The king list might not be history the way we think. It might be star maps written as king stories, a calendar going back not to the first king but to the last great disaster. In the 1840 seconds, a young man from Britain named Austin Henry Layard was traveling through northern Iraq. He saw strange hills rising from the sand near a town called Mosul. Local people stayed away. They said the hills were haunted, cursed, the leftovers of cities destroyed by God for being evil. Layard ignored them and started digging. Under the sand, he found Nineveh, capital of the Assyrian Empire, palace of King Ashurbanipal, and in the ruins of the palace library, buried under fallen walls and dust, he found more than 30,000 clay tablets. The tablets were sent to London. They sat in storage for years before anyone could read them. Cuneiform was still being figured out. The languages were strange, but slowly, carefully, experts began to translate. And what they found inside shook everything people thought about the Bible. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the Enuma Elish, the Atrahasis, stories older than Genesis, older than the Torah, older than anything in Western books. But the stories were the same. Humans made from clay, a great flood sent to erase the world. One man warned by the gods, a boat built to exact measurements, animals saved in pairs, water rising to cover mountains. When the flood ended, the man sent out birds to find dry land. The Bible story in Genesis had not come from God to Moses on a mountain. It had been copied from Sumerian sources 1,000 years older. This was not stealing, this was inheritance. The Hebrew people living as prisoners in Babylon had read these texts. They translated them, they changed them, they wove them into their own faith. The flood was not a Jewish story, it was a human story. A memory written in every culture of the ancient Near East because something real had happened. Something so bad that 5,000 years later, parents still told their children about the time the world drowned. The Sumerian flood story is called the Eridu Genesis. It talks about a time before cities, when humans lived scattered and wild. The gods got tired of the noise, the chaos, the violence. They decided to send a flood to wash the earth clean. But one god, Enki, god of wisdom and water, felt sorry for a man named Ziusudra. Enki whispered through the walls of Ziusudra's house. He warned him about the coming flood. He told him to build a boat, to seal it with tar, to bring his family and seeds of all living things. The flood came. It lasted 7 days and 7 nights. When it stopped, Ziusudra opened a window and saw the sun. He cried. He made an offering. The gods gave him eternal life. Not because he was good, but because he saved the memory of what had been. Rocks and dirt support the story of a big flood in Mesopotamia, around 2900 before the Common Era. Samples drilled from the bottom of the Persian Gulf show a sudden rush of river dirt during that time. A huge flood swept down from the mountains, carrying mud and everything in its path into the sea. But the flood in the tablets might talk about something older, something global. About 12,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, the oceans rose over 400 feet. Coasts where humans had lived for thousands of years went underwater. Whole lands vanished under waves. The survivors moved inland, carrying memories with them. Those memories became myths. Flood stories appear in over 200 cultures around the world, from Iraq to India to China to the Americas. They all describe the same thing: water rising without warning, the world ending. A few chosen people rebuilding from pieces. The tablets describe what came after the flood, a world split apart. Before the flood, there had been unity, one language, one set of gods, one way of understanding the stars. After the flood, humans scattered, languages broke, gods multiplied, knowledge became broken, guarded by priests, hidden in texts that only special people could read. The Sumerians built ziggurats, giant stepped pyramids that worked as temples, star-watching towers, and government centers. The biggest, the ziggurat of Ur, stood over 100 feet tall, built from millions of mud bricks baked in ovens and carried to the site by workers who labored day and night. At the top was a room for Nana, the moon god. From that height, priests could track the moon, planets, and stars with amazing accuracy. They knew how long a moon month was down to seconds. They could predict when the moon would go dark years ahead. They understood that planets moved in patterns, that those patterns could be mapped and used to guess what would happen next. This was not simple sky watching. This was math, real star science. And it appeared fully formed, no sign of slow learning. As if someone had given them the answers and said, "Here, this is how you read the sky." The tablets also record something else. Lists, endless lists. Lists of kings, lists of gods, lists of cities, lists of gifts, lists of stars, lists of plants and animals and stones and rivers. The Sumerians were obsessed with writing everything down, with naming every part of the world, with recording those names forever. Why? Maybe because they knew how easily knowledge could disappear. Maybe because they were scared that what was forgotten once could be forgotten again. So they wrote it all, not on paper that rots, not on animal skin that burns, but on clay. When you bake clay, it becomes almost impossible to destroy. Fire cannot burn it. Water cannot melt it. Only breaking it on purpose can erase it, and even then, the pieces stay, waiting in the dust to be put back together. In 1902, German diggers working in the old city of Babylon found clay tablets in the ruins of a library next to the Temple of Marduk. The tablets were about stars. They recorded where Venus was in the sky over 21 years, tracking when it appeared and disappeared with such care that modern star scientists could use the information to figure out the exact dates. The records came from the time of King Amisaduqa, around 1650 before the Common Era. But the texts talked about older records, observations made thousands of years before, during the time of the first kings, observations that no longer existed but had been copied over and over, saving information from a time so far back it had become legend. Why track Venus? Because Venus is a clock. Its pattern repeats every 8 years so perfectly you can base calendars on it. The Sumerians knew this. They called Venus Inanna, Queen of Heaven. They recorded her movements not as worship but as science. Because if you understand Venus, you understand time. And if you understand time, you can see what is coming, not through magic, through math. The tablets describe a universe of order. 7 things you could see in the sky: Sunday moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, each connected to a god, each moving through the sky in ways you could predict. And those patterns, the Sumerians believed, touched events on Earth. Not because gods were mean or kind, but because everything was connected, as above, so below. The phrase shows up in later writings from Egypt and Greece. But the idea starts here, in Sumer. The belief that the sky and the ground are mirrors of each other, tied by rules that can be watched, written down, and understood. Modern science says star reading is fake. But maybe the Sumerians were not talking about fate. Maybe they were talking about cycles, weather cycles, sun cycles, magnetic cycles, patterns that shape life on Earth in ways we are only now starting to measure. The sun goes through an 11-year cycle. Solar flares, bursts of energy, things that mess with Earth's magnetic field, interrupt signals, maybe even change weather. The Sumerians did not have satellites or sensors, but they had hundreds of years of watching. And if they noticed connections between sun behavior and things happening on Earth, they would write it down, not as magic, as information. The deeper experts dig into the tablets, the smarter the math gets. The Sumerians understood square roots, cube roots, growth that speeds up. They figured out the area of circles using a number close to pi. accurate to several decimal places. They solved square equations. They understood number patterns that grow. All of this appears suddenly. No earlier tradition of simpler math. It is like someone opened a textbook and started teaching college level without ever covering the basics. Unless the basics had already been taught somewhere else, sometime before. One tablet, called Plimpton 322, is a math table showing Pythagorean triples, sets of three numbers that fit the rule a squared plus b squared equals c squared. The tablet is from around 1800 before the Common Era, over 1,000 years before Pythagoras. It has 15 rows of numbers, calculated so perfectly that modern math experts are still trying to figure out how it was done. There is no guessing here, no slow improvement. Just finished math. Perfectly correct. Written by someone who understood numbers at a level that would not be matched again until the Greeks. What were they calculating? Some experts think it was for measuring land, dividing farms, splitting property. But the numbers are too big for that, too perfect. These are not practical calculations. These are theory. Pure math done just to do it. Or maybe done to save a method. A way of thinking that had to be recorded before it was lost. The tablets also have star lists. Lists of star groups with descriptions of their shapes and where they sit. The groups are familiar. We still use some today. Taurus the bull, Leo the lion, Scorpio the scorpion. The Sumerians cut the sky into 12 pieces. The zodiac, they gave each piece to a star group. They knew the sun moved through these groups over a year, spending about 1 month in each. They knew the point where the sun rose on the spring balance day shifted slowly over hundreds of years. We call this the wobble of Earth, and they recorded that shift in their texts, noting the change from one age to another as the sunrise group changed. This is not basic star watching. This is long-term observation needing hundreds of years of record keeping done the same way. You cannot discover Earth's wobble by watching the sky for one lifetime. You need generations of watchers, all using the same system, all recording their observations in a way that can be passed down perfect. The Sumerians had this. But who taught them? Where did the first star watchers learn to track the wobble? And why did they think it was important enough to write down? One answer might be the idea of the Great Year, the belief that time moves in circles, that after 25,920 years, one full wobble cycle, the universe resets. The stars go back to where they started. The ages repeat. Civilizations rise and fall in rhythm with the turning of the sky. The Sumerians believed in circle time, not straight progress, but eternal return. History as a wheel, turning slowly, carrying humans through ages of creation and destruction, rise and fall. And if you understand the wheel, if you can measure its turning, you know where you are in the cycle. You know when the next disaster is coming, and you can get ready. The tablets speak of warnings, signs read in the sky, eclipses that meant trouble, comets that showed the gods were angry. But these were not silly fears, they were patterns. Things noticed over hundreds of years. The Sumerians did not have telescopes, but they had time. And time, mixed with patience and careful writing, shows patterns invisible to one generation. In the ruins of Uruk, diggers found a library with over 5,000 tablets. Most were boring, records of grain storage, tax receipts, trade contracts. But some were different: creation myths, prayers, spells, medical texts describing operations and plant medicines, legal codes listing punishments for crimes, and buried among them, one tablet that described the size of the universe. It said the universe had 3 parts: heaven, earth, the underworld. Each part was ruled by different gods. Each had its own laws. Between them flowed rivers of water and fire, channels where souls traveled after death, guided by prayers and gifts from the living. This sounds like fantasy until you realize it maps onto real things. The sky above, the ground below, the unseen world under, reached only through caves and cracks in the earth. The Sumerians were not making up stories. They were describing their experience of being alive in the only language they had. And hidden in that language were star rules, math ratios, and shape ideas that would not be written down officially again until the Greeks. What if the Sumerians were not the first? What if they inherited? What if the knowledge in their tablets came from an earlier group that had already mapped the sky, figured out the cycles, and built monuments to lock that knowledge in stone? What if that earlier group was destroyed, erased by flood or fire or some space disaster that left only pieces? The survivors would have carried what they could: seeds, tools, memory. Not perfect memory, not every detail, but enough to rebuild, enough to restart, enough to press into clay the important parts of what had been, so future people would not have to start from nothing. The Sumerians disappeared, not all at once, but slowly. Their language was replaced by Akkadian. Their cities were taken over by Babylon. Their gods were absorbed into new religions. By 1800 before the Common Era, Sumerian was a dead language, known only to priests and scribes who copied old texts without really understanding them. But the knowledge did not die. It was passed on to Babylon, to Assyria, to Persia, to Greece, to Rome, and finally to us. The counting by 60, the zodiac, the 7-day week, the idea that law should be written down and saved. All Sumerian gifts. We stand on their shoulders without knowing it. Every time we check the clock, every time we find our way by stars, every time we divide a circle or figure an angle, we are using tools invented or recovered by scribes working in mud brick temples 5,000 years ago. They did not have computers, they did not have electricity, but they had something we are losing: patience. The willingness to watch reality carefully over hundreds of years, to record what they saw in a form that would last, not for money, not for fame, but because knowledge itself was sacred, because forgetting was the worst sin, and because they believed, right or wrong, that the future would need what they saved. In southern Iraq, wind blows over hills that used to be cities. The Tigris has changed its path. The Euphrates is smaller than it was. The marshes have been drained, the temples have fallen apart, but the tablets remain, some in museums, some in private collections, some still buried, waiting to be found. Each one a voice from deep in the past, each one a piece of a story we are still learning to read. And so we come back to the question we started with. What if humanity's oldest written words were not meant to tell the beginning? What if they were meant to warn us about the ending? Not the end of the world, but the end of an age. The change from one cycle to another. The moment when the great year turns and everything we built starts to fall. The Sumerians knew this. They lived through it. They survived it. And they wrote it down, not as history, but as instruction. A guide for rebuilding. A map for the next survivors. Because if civilization has fallen once, it can fall again. And when it does, the knowledge we save, the records we leave, the monuments we build to last longer than ourselves, those will be the seeds of the next beginning. Not new, not original, but restored, recovered, remembered. The Sumerians did not invent civilization. They restored it. And they left us the tools to do the same. Under the ruins of Nippur, a city holy to the Sumerian god Enlil, diggers found a temple library from around 2500 before the Common Era. It held over 60,000 tablets. Most were ordinary, lists of temple gifts, grain counts, songs sung during religious events. But hidden among the boring records were texts that should not exist in that time. Math tables figuring out planet paths, medicine recipes using plants that do not grow in Iraq, building plans for water systems so smart they match modern engineering, and star charts that mapped groups of stars you cannot see with just your eyes from where Sumer was located. How How could they see stars below their view, unless the charts were copied from watching done somewhere else? Somewhere farther south where the sky showed different star groups, or somewhere much older when the stars were in different spots because of Earth's wobble. The texts do not explain, they just show the information, as if the scribes were copying from sources they themselves did not fully understand, saving rather than creating. One tablet, numbered CBS 11,901 inches, the catalogue, has a detailed description of the solar system. It lists the Sun at the center, then the planets in correct order: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. It describes their sizes compared to each other. It notes that some planets have moons. It says Saturn is surrounded by a ring. All of this written 4,000 years before Galileo pointed a telescope at the sky and proved Saturn had rings. Modern experts say the tablet is wrong, a mistake in translation, a lucky guess. But the wedge marks are clear. The word for ring is the same word used everywhere else to describe round objects. And the description of the planets matches reality too closely to be accident. If the Sumerians did not learn this by watching, how did they know? The normal answer is, they did not. The tablet must be fake, or the translation must be wrong. But if we take the text as it is written, then we must think about the chance that Sumerians had access to knowledge gotten through ways we do not understand, either inherited from an earlier group with better tools for watching, or given by someone who had seen the planets up close. The texts call them the Apkallu, the ones who came before, the ones who taught. Half human, half fish, coming from the sea to bring wisdom to a world coming out of darkness. We read this as myth. But myths are not made from nothing. They are twisted memories. Stories changed by retelling until the facts blur, but the main idea stays. What if the Apkallu were not gods or fish people, but survivors of a sea-based culture destroyed by rising oceans at the end of the Ice Age? Refugees who came by boat, bringing knowledge of stars, farming, and building to Stone Age people, still learning to plant seeds. They would have seemed like gods. Their knowledge would have seemed like magic. And over time, their real history would turn into myth. But the memory would stay, carved into clay, passed through scribe schools, copied and recopied until the original meaning was lost, but the information survived. This pattern repeats around the ancient world. In Egypt, the priests of Heliopolis said their knowledge came from Thoth, god of wisdom, who appeared after a great flood to teach writing and science. In India, the Vedas describe the 7 rishis, wise men who survived a flood and kept sacred knowledge through spoken word. In Central America, the Maya and Aztecs spoke of Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent who came from across the sea to teach star watching and farming. Different names, different cultures, but the same shape. Knowledge arrives after disaster. It is brought by strangers, and it changes Stone Age people into civilizations almost overnight. The dirt and rock support this. Around 10,000 before the Common Era, humans lived in small groups hunting animals and gathering plants. By 3000 before the Common Era, we had cities, writing, law codes, and giant buildings. That is 7,000 years. In Earth time, a blink. Something sped up human growth. Something caused a jump from stone tools to ziggurats in a time that does not fit slow change. The normal explanation is farming. Growing food created extra. Extra enabled people to specialize. Specialization led to cities. But this does not account for how smart early civilizations were. The Sumerians did not slowly develop writing. They started with a complete system of over 1,000 symbols. The Egyptians did not experiment with pyramid building. They began with the step pyramid of Djoser, already perfectly shaped, and then built the Great Pyramid a few generations later, with mistakes measured in tiny fractions of inches. This is not trial and error. This is following a plan, as if someone knew what the end result should look like and worked backward to make it. In the 1,970 seconds, a researcher named Zechariah Sitchin suggested a wild theory. He said the Sumerian tablets described not mythology but history, that the Anunnaki, gods who came down from the sky, were space visitors who changed human genes to make us work for them. He pointed to the creation myth in the Atrahasis, which describes gods mixing their blood with clay to create humans. He read this as a description of gene mixing. Modern experts reject Sitchin's translations as wrong, his readings as guesses, and his conclusions as fake science. But the question he raised stays. If the Sumerians were not describing real events, why are their myths so specific? Why do they include technical details? Why do they read less like poetry and more like reports? One tablet describes the Anunnaki coming from a planet called Nibiru, which circles the sun in a huge egg-shaped path, returning to the inner solar system every 3,600 years. Sitchin said this was a real planet. Star scientists say no such planet exists, but recent studies suggest there might be a large, faraway object affecting the paths of outer solar system bodies. Star scientists call it Planet 9. It has not been seen directly, but its pull can be measured. Could the Sumerians have known about it 5,000 years ago? Not likely, unless someone told them. We are left with two choices. Either the Sumerians invented a complex mythology that by accident lines up with modern star science, or they saved pieces of knowledge gotten from a source we do not recognize. Neither answer is comfortable. The first needs us to believe in amazing luck. The second needs us to change everything we think we know about the history of civilization. Maybe the truth is in between. Maybe the Sumerians did not invent or receive their knowledge. Maybe they remembered humans have been physically modern for over 200,000 years. For most of that time, we left no buildings, no writing, no cities. But missing proof is not proof of missing. What if civilizations rose and fell during those 200,000 years? What if they were erased by ice ages, floods, or space rocks hitting Earth? What if the Sumerians were the first group after disaster to rebuild using pieces saved from before? This would explain the sudden appearance of smart knowledge. It would explain the myths of gods teaching humans. It would explain why the Sumerians saw themselves not as inventors but as restorers. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the hero looks for eternal life. He travels to the edge of the world to meet Utnapishtim, the man who survived the flood and was given forever life by the gods. Utnapishtim tells Gilgamesh the story of the flood. He describes how the gods decided to destroy humanity, how Enki warned him, how he built the boat, how the waters rose. Then he tells Gilgamesh something deep. He says the gods did not destroy humanity out of anger. They destroyed humanity because we had become too many, too loud, too wild. We had forgotten the order of things. We had stopped listening to the rhythms of the earth and sky. So the reset came, not as punishment, but as correction. Gilgamesh does not get eternal life, but he returns to Uruk with something better. Knowledge, the understanding that life is short, that civilizations rise and fall, and that the only forever available to humans is through what we create, what we build, and what we pass down. He orders the story of his trip carved into stone, so future people will remember, not the man, but the lesson. This is the purpose of the tablets, not to make kings or gods look good, but to save memory, to make sure that the next time the world ends, the survivors will have something to rebuild from, a foundation, a reference, a whisper from the past that says, "You are not alone. We have been here before. We survived, and so can you." The wind moves across the Iraqi desert. The hills are quiet, but under the quiet, tablets wait. Some have been found, others stay buried. Each one a piece of a puzzle too big to see in one lifetime. But the pieces are there, waiting for the generation patient enough to put them together, waiting for us to ask the right questions. Not who built civilization, but who rebuilt it, and from what. The deeper you look into Sumerian beliefs about the universe, the stranger it gets. The tablets describe a universe ruled by laws older than the gods. The Mes, said like May, were cosmic rules, not moral commands, not religious orders, but laws of nature written in language and symbol. There were over 100 Mes, covering everything from kingship and war to music and metalworking. Each Mes was a unit of knowledge, a pattern that shaped reality. The gods did not create the Mes, they inherited them, and they guarded them carefully, because whoever had the Mes had power. In one myth, the goddess Inanna travels to the city of Eridu to visit her grandfather Enki, god of wisdom and keeper of the Mes. She gets Enki drunk on beer. While he is drunk, she steals the Mes and runs to her own city, Uruk. Enki sends demons to chase her, but she escapes. When the Mes arrive in Uruk, the city changes overnight. It gets writing, law, farming, music, and building skills. Not slowly, instantly, as if knowledge were a thing that could be moved whole, turning on hidden power the moment it arrived. This is not how we think knowledge works. We think it builds up slowly through trying and failing, generation after generation. But the Sumerians thought differently. They thought knowledge was pattern-based, already existing, waiting to be found, not made. And once found, it could be written down, stored, and moved. Like computer code, like a seed that holds the plan for a whole tree. Plant the seed in good ground, and the tree will grow. Not because the seed invents the tree, but because the tree already exists inside the seed as possibility. The Mes were seeds, and the tablets were the ground where those seeds were planted. Each tablet was a way to save, a method to lock complex knowledge in a material that lasts. Clay survives fire. It survives water. It survives time. And when baked, it becomes nearly impossible to destroy. The Sumerians understood this. They chose clay on purpose. They knew papyrus would rot, wood would burn, and spoken word would change. But clay would last, so they wrote everything on clay. Not just myths and laws, but technical guides. Step-by-step instructions for making beer, baking bread, treating sickness, doing operations, casting bronze, building boats, and watering fields. They were creating a library for a future that did not exist yet. A library made to survive the next collapse. And there would be another collapse. The Sumerians knew this. Their myths were full of cycles. World created, world destroyed, world reborn, over and over. The gods themselves were subject to these cycles. They aged, they died, they were replaced. And humanity, caught in the turning of the wheel, had to adapt or die. The only way to go beyond the cycle was to remember, to write down the pattern, to leave behind a map that future people could follow when they found themselves lost in the ruins of a disappeared age. One of the strangest tablets is the Sumerian king list. It records every ruler of Sumer from the beginning of time. But the beginning of time, according to the list, is not 4,000 or 5,000 before the Common Era. It is much older. The list says, when kingship was lowered from heaven, kingship was in Eridu. Eridu, the oldest city in Sumer, founded according to the list before the flood. And the first kings of Eridu ruled for tens of thousands of years. Alulim ruled for 28,800 years. Alaungar ruled for 36,000 years. These numbers are not random. They are multiples of 3,600. The same number Sitchin identified as the time it takes Nibiru to go around the sun. Traditional scholars say these numbers are symbolic, that they represent not real years but ages, time periods, stretches in mythological time. But why use such exact numbers? Why not just say, he ruled for a very long time? The exactness suggests purpose, as if the numbers hide something, maybe not lifespans but time gaps, star cycles, astronomy constants, lengths of watching needed to map the heavens. If a civilization focused on tracking stars needed to watch for 28,800 years to prove a certain cycle, then that number would be recorded, not as a king's lifespan, but as the length of a star-watching project crossing many generations. After the flood, the king list continues, but now the reigns are shorter. Still long by modern thinking. 1,200 years, 800 years, but human in scale, and slowly, over hundreds of years, the numbers go down more. By the time we reach the historical dynasties around 2600 before the Common Era, the kings are ruling for 20 or 30 years, normal lifespans. The shift from myth time to history time is gradual, as if memory itself were fading. The earlier the event, the more twisted the record. But the structure stays, the names stay, and the claim that kingship came from heaven stays. What does it mean for kingship to be lowered from heaven? In Sumerian thought, heaven was not just the sky, it was the realm of order. The gods lived in heaven because heaven was unchanging. The stars moved in perfect cycles. The seasons came back with regularity. Heaven was the model, earth was the copy. Kingship, therefore, was not invented by humans. It was a reflection of cosmic order. The king was a bridge between heaven and earth, responsible for keeping the alignment. When the king failed, when he ruled unfairly or ignored the rituals, the alignment broke. Chaos came back, and the gods sent floods, droughts, or invasions to bring back balance. This is not Stone Age superstition. This is systems thinking. The Sumerians understood that societies are fragile, that order must be kept through constant effort, that without law, without structure, without rituals that tie people together, civilization falls into violence and disorder. So they locked those rituals in tablets. They made them permanent. They made sure that even if a king forgot his duties, the tablets would remember. The tablets were not just records, they were instruction guides, maps for keeping civilization running. In the city of Lagash, diggers found a cone-shaped clay object, carved with a text called the Reforms of Urukagina. It dates to around 2350 before the Common Era and describes a king who threw out a corrupt dynasty and brought back justice. He cancelled debts, he protected widows and orphans, he lowered taxes, he banned lending money for profit. And he declared that the strong shall not crush the weak. This is the oldest record of social justice in human history. Not justice as revenge, but justice as balance, as bringing back right relationship between the powerful and the powerless. Urukagina did not claim to invent these reforms. He claimed to restore them. He said he was returning to the laws of the old days, the days when the gods walked among men and kingship was lowered from heaven. He was not a revolutionary, he was a restorer, and his reforms were written on clay and buried in the foundation of a temple so future people would know what justice looked like. This pattern repeats. Hammurabi, king of Babylon, famous for his law code, did not claim to invent law. He claimed to receive it from the sun god, Shamash. The code was carved into stone and placed in a public square so anyone, able to read or not, could witness it. The laws were not random, they were balanced. An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Not cruelty, but restraint. The punishment must match the crime. No more, no less. This is mathematical justice, justice as equation, as balance restored. And Hammurabi's code was not original. It was based on older Sumerian codes, the code of Ur-Nammu, the code of Lipit Ishtar. Each king copied the previous king's laws, changed them, and added his own. Each generation saved the legal tradition, improving it, passing it forward. Law was not frozen, it grew, but it grew slowly, carefully, with reference to what came before. Because the Sumerians understood that law was not invented, it was discovered by watching human nature, by seeing what worked and what failed, by recording the results over hundreds of years, and by writing those results in stone and clay so future judges would not have to start from ignorance. This is the Sumerian gift to us. Not gods, not myths, but method. The idea that knowledge can be saved, that patterns can be recognized, that the future can learn from the past if the past is recorded honestly and permanently. The tablets are not mystical, they are practical. They are the work of scribes who understood that memory is weak, that kings die, that cities fall, and that the only way to outlast disaster is to write it down, to lock the important parts, to leave behind a map for the next survivors. The temples of Sumer were not just places of worship, they were economic centers, government hubs, schools, libraries, star-watching towers. Each temple employed dozens of scribes, priests, and managers who ran huge farms, tracked crop production, recorded trade deals, and observed the heavens. The temples owned land, they hired workers, they lent grain to farmers and collected interest. They were, basically, the world's first corporations. And they ran on paperwork, endless clay tablets documenting every deal, every gift, every star observation. Why such obsessive record-keeping? Because the Sumerians understood something basic. Civilization is not held together by force, it is held together by trust. And trust needs transparency. If a farmer borrows grain from the temple, he needs to know how much he owes and when it is due. If a worker is paid for labor, he needs a receipt proving payment. If a king claims divine authority, he needs carvings on public monuments confirming that authority. Without records, arguments cannot be settled, debts cannot be collected, laws cannot be enforced, and civilization falls into chaos. The tablets were the glue holding Sumer together. They were proof, evidence, memory made solid. And when Sumer fell, when cities were conquered and temples burned, the tablets survived. They were buried, scattered, broken, but not destroyed. And hundreds of years later, when new kingdoms rose, their scribes found the old tablets, figured them out, and started copying them. The knowledge was not lost. It was sleeping, waiting. This is the pattern. Civilization falls. Knowledge is saved in lasting form. Survivors find the records. They translate them. They rebuild. And the cycle continues. We are living in one turn of that cycle right now. The Sumerians fell, the Babylonians fell, the Assyrians fell, the Persians, Greeks, Romans, all fell. But the knowledge survived, passed through libraries, through monasteries, through universities, through books and now digital files. We are the inheritors, the latest generation in a chain going back 5,000 years. And the question we must ask is, what are we saving? What records are we leaving behind? And will they survive the next collapse? Because there will be a next collapse. Not because gods order it, but because that is how complex systems work. They rise, they peak, they decline, they fall. The only question is whether the fall is final or whether something survives to rebuild. The Sumerians chose survival. They chose to lock their knowledge in the most lasting material available. They chose to trust that the future would care enough to dig up their tablets and read them. And they were right. We did dig them up. We did read them. And now we know we are not the first. That humanity has built and lost and rebuilt before. And that the wisdom of the ancients is not Stone Age foolishness. It is the hard-won understanding of people who survived disasters we can barely imagine. Beyond Mesopotamia, similar mysteries appear around the world. In the hills of southeastern Turkey, near the modern town of Sanliurfa, lies a site that has rewritten everything we thought we knew about human civilization. Göbekli Tepe, meaning Potbelly Hill in Turkish, is a complex of massive stone circles and giant rock structures dating to around 9,500 before the Common Era. To understand how impossible this is, think about what we teach in school. 9,500 before the Common Era is the pre-pottery Stone Age. An era before farming, before cities, before writing, before anything we connect with civilization. Humans at that time were supposed to be nomadic hunter-gatherers, living in small groups, surviving on wild plants and game. They were not supposed to be able to build giant monuments. Yet Göbekli exists. The site has at least 20 circular structures, each defined by massive T-shaped pillars carved from limestone bedrock. Some pillars stand over 18 feet tall, and weigh up to 20 tons. They are decorated with detailed carvings: foxes, lions, scorpions, snakes, vultures, bulls, human-like figures with no faces. The carvings are not simple scratches, they are art, three-dimensional sculpture showing movement and life. The level of skill required to create these images suggests a tradition of stoneworking going back generations. But where is the earlier evidence? Where are the practice pieces, the simpler versions? They do not exist. Göbekli appears fully formed, as if the builders already knew what they were doing. Moving stones weighing 20 tons without wheels, without metal tools, without draft animals, should be impossible for Stone Age people. Yet they did it. Quarries have been found nearby where the pillars were cut directly from bedrock using stone hammers. Grooves were carved around the block. Wedges were driven in. The stone was split free. Then somehow, groups of people moved these blocks uphill to the construction site and raised them upright. The effort required would have needed hundreds of workers. Organized labor on a scale that should not exist before agriculture, before permanent settlements, before social hierarchy. And here is the strangest part. After Göbekli was built, after centuries or maybe millennia of use, it was deliberately buried, not abandoned, not destroyed by enemies, buried on purpose. Tons of dirt and rubble were carried in and piled over the structures until they disappeared under artificial hills. Why? Why would people invest so much effort to build something, use it, and then bury it so completely that it would be forgotten for 11,000 years? Some researchers think it was a ritual act, a closing ceremony, a way to seal sacred knowledge when the time came to move on. As if the builders knew an age was ending and wanted to preserve the site intact, hidden until a future generation was ready to find it. The implications are staggering. If Stone Age hunter-gatherers could build Göbekli, then our entire understanding of human development is wrong. Either these were not simple hunter-gatherers, or hunter-gatherers were far more capable than we assumed. Or maybe the labels are wrong. Maybe Göbekli was built by survivors of an older culture. People who knew stoneworking, who understood astronomy, who had social organization, but who had lost everything else in a cataclysm and were rebuilding with the skills they remembered. In Egypt, the mystery deepens. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built supposedly around 2500 before the Common Era, remains one of the most precise structures ever created. Its sides align to true north with an accuracy of less than 1/10 of 1 degree. A margin of error so small it rivals modern surveying. The base is level to within 1 inch across 13 acres. The stones fit so tightly that a blade cannot slip between them, and it was built, according to mainstream history, by a Bronze Age civilization using copper tools, wooden sledges, and human muscle. The numbers are absurd. 2,300,000 blocks, average weight 2.5 tons. Some blocks weigh 80 tons, transported from quarries miles away, lifted into place with no cranes, no pulleys, no machinery we can identify. Mainstream Egyptology says it took 20 years to build. That means placing one block every 2 minutes, non-stop, day and night, for 2 decades. Possible? Maybe, but barely. And it assumes a level of organization, planning, and engineering that should not exist in the Bronze Age. Then there is the Sphinx. As discussed earlier, geological evidence suggests the Sphinx enclosure shows water erosion patterns consistent with heavy rainfall over centuries, rainfall that ended thousands of years before the pharaohs. If the Sphinx is older than we have been told, then so is the knowledge required to carve it. And if Giza is part of a larger plan encoding astronomical alignments from 10,500 before the Common Era, then the entire site becomes a message, a timestamp, a marker saying, "We were here when the stars were in this position. We built this to remember when our world ended." In Central America, the Maya built pyramid cities deep in the jungle. They developed a writing system. They tracked Venus with accuracy matching modern astronomy. They used a calendar more precise than the one used in Europe until the 1500s. and they carved stone monuments called stelae, recording dates, stretching back thousands of years before their own civilization. Dates so old they reference events no human could have witnessed, unless the dates are mythological, or unless they record information inherited from an earlier source. The Maya creation myth, the Popol Vuh, describes multiple worlds. Each world is created, populated by humans, and then destroyed when the gods decide the humans are flawed. After each destruction, a new world begins. The current world, according to the Maya, is the fourth. The previous three were erased, the first by flood, the second by fire, the third by wind. Only a few survived each time, carrying forward the memory of what had been. This is not unique to the Maya. The Aztecs told the same story. The Hopi of North America describe emerging from previous worlds that were destroyed. Hindu texts describe cycles of creation and destruction spanning millions of years. Norse mythology speaks of Ragnarok, the end of the gods and the world, followed by rebirth. Different cultures, different languages, different continents, but the same story. The world has ended before, it will end again, and the survivors must remember, must preserve, must rebuild. What if these are not myths? What if they are memories, distorted by time, shaped by retelling, but rooted in something real? Something that happened not once, but multiple times over the span of human existence. Ice ages, floods, volcanic eruptions, meteor impacts, solar flares, magnetic pole shifts. Any of these could erase civilizations, leave only scattered survivors, force humanity to start over with fragments of what was known before. The Sumerians were not unique. They were part of a pattern of civilizations rising, falling, and leaving behind clues for the next cycle. The tablets are one set of clues. The pyramids are another. The stone circles. The underwater ruins off the coasts of India and Japan. The massive stone walls in Peru built with blocks so heavy modern cranes struggle to lift them. All clues. All pieces of a puzzle scattered across time and geography, waiting for a generation willing to see the pattern. We are that generation. We have the tools. We have the technology. We can dig deeper, date more accurately, analyze more thoroughly than any generation before us. We can read the tablets. We can survey the monuments. We can map the stars and compare them to ancient alignments. We can test the stones and measure the erosion. We can do what the ancients could not. We can see the whole picture, but only if we are willing to look. Only if we are brave enough to question what we have been taught. Only if we care enough to preserve what we find. The wind passes over the ruins. The tablets sleep in storage rooms and museum baskets. The pyramids stand silent under the desert sun, and the question hangs in the air like dust. What will we do with what they left us? Will we honor it? Will we study it? Will we preserve it? Or will we ignore it, dismiss it, let it be forgotten until the next collapse comes and someone else has to dig it up and wonder, as we wonder now, what we knew and why we did not listen? The night deepens. The stars turn slowly overhead. The same stars the Sumerians watched. The same stars that guided the builders of Göbekli Tepe. The same stars that aligned with the pyramids when Leo rose at dawn 12,000 years ago. They are still there, still moving in their ancient patterns, still marking time, still waiting for us to understand. And perhaps that is the final message. Not in the tablets, not in the stones, but in the act of looking up, the act of asking, the act of caring enough to remember. That is what makes us human. That is what the Sumerians understood. That is what we must not forget. The tablets have spoken. The monuments have testified. The pattern has emerged, and the story they tell is clear. We have been here before. We have built and lost and rebuilt. We have survived ice and fire and flood. And we have always left something behind. Some record, some clue, some whisper saying, "You are not alone. We walked this path, we fell, we rose again, and so can you." If this journey through time and mystery has touched you, Take a moment to like this video. Subscribe if you want to keep exploring the spaces between history and legend. Your support keeps these stories alive, keeps the work of remembering going, and maybe that is the real gift hidden in those ancient tablets. Not just what happened, but that someone cared enough to write it down, to bake it into clay, to bury it safely, to send it forward through 5,000 years to reach us. We do the same now in our own way, filming, recording, sharing, remembering, passing it forward to whoever comes next. Thank you for listening. Thank you for wondering. Thank you for caring enough to hear the voices of the deep past and to carry them with you into whatever future we are building together. Until the next story calls us back into the forgotten places, may you find peace in the present. May your questions lead you to meaningful answers. And may you rest well tonight, knowing the story is not over, knowing you are part of it, knowing the chain continues. The wind passes over the buried tablets one last time. The stars turn in their ancient dance. And memory, patient as stone, deep as time, waits for the next soul brave enough to dig. Good night.